it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Welcome, my dear friends, to this, the second of our two awesome collaborative festive videos, celebrating the best of the storytellers here on YouTube. Now, this is something of a tradition for me to host this on my channel, so I do so hope you enjoy these festive videos. Well, without further ado, let's move on. Now, if you missed the Christmas special, please go back and check it out. Some wonderful stories there. But now it's time for New Year's horror. And we begin with How I Came to Appreciate the Rain by Rose Black 2222, which features myself alongside Pumpkin Queen. How I Came to Appreciate the Rain. I used to hate it. Not just hate it, despise it. I loathed having my clothes soaked, and the pitter-pattering of it on the roof just drove me crazy. Stepping in mud puddles was an extra annoyance, not to mention ruining what would otherwise be bright, sunny days. However, that all changed one night. I'd just gotten off work. Tired from a long shift, I called an Uber to have me picked up. I glanced at the sky, seeing how overcast it was, hoping my ride would be here before the rain came down. Well, she did technically arrive after it began. Thankfully, though, it was before it got really started pouring.
How are you doing?
My driver asked me. I'm alright. I'm just a little tired.
I feel ya. Can you believe this weather? I checked it earlier, and it said only 2% chance of rain.
Well, yes, it was a big 2%.
You can say that again. Anyway, because of it, getting to your neighborhood will take a little longer.
That's fine. Just let me know when we're close. She gave me a nod and then turned forward. As she drove us out of the parking lot, I pulled out my phone to pass the time. While watching a video, I heard her say something that caught my attention.
What the hell?
Something wrong?
Oh, it's nothing. I thought I saw something cross the street just now. Didn't get a good look at it though.
Yeah, it was probably a deer. We get those sometimes around here. So I looked back down at the video I was watching.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, and maybe it was just my imagination, I could have sworn it was running up right.
What? I asked, glancing back up at her. I had to be someone crossing the street then.
I'm not too sure of that. Whatever crossed the street definitely had some endless, or at least horns.
Well, at this point, I considered the possibility that she was messing with me. However, seeing her nervous expression in the rearview mirror made me reconsider this. Either she happened to be a really good actor, crazy, or worst of all, there really was something out there. Although I didn't show it, I began feeling uneasy as well. Well, just keep driving then. We'll be in my neighborhood soon. She did as told, focusing back on the road, and there was only silence between us for the next couple of minutes. Then I got a feeling of being watched. I felt like someone's eyes were burrowing into the back of my head. I didn't want to look back, and it was as though my neck was being controlled by puppet strings. Standing dead center of the road, with the rain pouring down around it, was the creature. It didn't exactly have antlers, but it didn't exactly have horns either. It's hard to explain. What I did find clear was that this thing was clearly not meant to be seen by human eyes. Well, what saved mine, as well as my driver's sanity, was the rain. Yes, the very thing that I'd despised for my entire life up until then was now the only thing shielding me from seeing that creature in its entirety. Although the rain obscured most of it, I did see some other features of it. Well, the most striking thing about it was its eyes. It didn't only have two, it had eyes covering its entire body. They were all human-like in appearance, and each one was a different color that glowed with a dim light. In them I saw only the gaze of a hungry predator.
Hey, are you alright?
Drive faster. Well, she didn't reply, but instead pressed harder on the gas. I didn't need her to tell me that she knew I'd seen it too. Yeah, the fear in her eyes made that perfectly clear. I wasn't happy with the fact we were speeding up. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first, and then it registered to me that it was growing taller. Already being tall, this caused it to be a staggering height. Its legs weren't the only thing growing. And it was only then that I noticed that its front legs weren't really legs at all. They were more akin to the arms of an ape. They too grew along with its fingers. Well, despite how unnerving that was to see, it was only the second most terrifying thing that it did. The first was when it let out a screech and gave chase.
Jesus almighty H. Christ!
Looking in her rearview mirror and seeing what I'd seen. God, it was impossibly fast, catching up to us with ease. Go faster.
What do you think I'm doing? I'm already pushing past the 100.
We could only hope we'd reach my neighborhood before it could reach us. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out that way. I returned my gaze out the back windshield and found it was no longer on the road. I informed my driver of this.
Maybe it gave... Oh, shit!
It had gotten in front of us. Well, she slammed on her brakes, trying to stop and presumably about to make a sharp U-turn. But it didn't give her the chance. Its arm shot forward, seizing her car by the sides, flipping it with ease. We screamed as it went into the air for a moment, and then fell onto the road on its roof, resulting in the windows shattering. I remember my teeth chattering on impact. God, I'm lucky that I didn't end up biting my own tongue off. What wasn't lucky is the fact that various shards of glass were now sticking into my ribs and chest. That, coupled with the fact that I'd hit my head, was causing me to rapidly lose consciousness. My driver was still conscious as it approached the vehicle. Having gotten closer to us, it had become more visible, even through the rain. I thought my mind would break at that moment, but by some miracle, a gust of wind blew some rain into my eyes, blurring them. Through my now limited vision, I made out one of its arms, going into my driver's window, grabbing her, and then yanking her out, screaming. Its other arm stretched towards me, and that's when I finally passed out. I woke up later in the hospital. The doctors told me it was a wonder I was still alive. As it turned out, we were close enough to my neighborhood for what some of my neighbors thought was a car wreck to be heard. I'm thankful to them for calling an ambulance and to the paramedics who got me to the hospital. They had to defibrillate me on the way there, and I required a lot of blood as well as bandages, plus some stitches. Some cops were there to take my statement. Well, I knew that telling them the truth would get me thrown into a straitjacket. Therefore, I instead told them a deer had caused my driver's car to be flipped. Well, that's sort of true. Well, they thankfully didn't press me for further questions. Well, it took many months of physical therapy, but I'm happy to say that I've managed to make a full recovery. I've also gotten a new job because my previous one let me go for missing too many days. Well, personally, I think it's better this way. The job I have now is so close I can walk to it. Plus, I don't have to take that godforsaken road anymore. Speaking of which, my experience isn't an isolated incident. Since then, which was over 2 years ago now, a number of accidents and disappearances have occurred along that road. And due to this, the road has been condemned. Not sure when it appeared or if it's always been there. Maybe it's some kind of extra-dimensional being that decided to come into our world. Maybe it's a forest spirit awakened and enraged by humanity encroaching on its territory. So far, I'm the only one who has survived seeing it, and I think I know why. The answer is something I try not to think about for the sake of my own mental health. I believe the reason it didn't take me was because, technically, I'd been dead. That means it only wants live prey. To do what with them, I have no clue. Nor do I wish to ever find out. Sometimes, when it's raining, I'll stare out of my window and think about that night. About how it kept me from fully seeing that creature. I always think of it akin to a mother shielding her impressionable toddler from seeing something that could scar them for life. Did some force looking out for me cause the storm that saved me, or had it merely occurred by coincidence? In either case, the steady pitter-pattering of it on my roof is something I now find very relaxing. Our next story this evening features the vocal talents of Ehab and James, not Jack, with the story, My Teacher is a Killer.
I'm in my English teacher's walls. The dumbass doesn't even realize I'm hiding in the walls of his house. Why am I here, you ask? Well, it all started when he gave me that bad grade at the start of the year. In fact, all year he's been just giving me one bad grade after another. Why does he pick on me like he does? I work hard. I turn in my essays. Who cares if I have a controversial opinion about the characters we read about? That doesn't mean he has any right to flunk me. But here we are. As soon as this idiot goes to sleep, I'm gonna kill him in the most horrific way imaginable. He's gonna regret ever meeting me. But really, I'm doing him a mercy. His name is Mr. Bingo, for Pete's sake. What kind of name is that? I haven't heard him in a hot minute, so I squeeze out of the wall and into his basement. What a creep. Look at how many taxidermied animals he has. Beavers, badgers, deer, the works. They're everywhere. He even has 4 taxidermied people standing by one wall. Wait, what the? No, my eyes aren't deceiving me. This guy actually has 4 taxidermied people in his basement. What the hell? I thought I had a few screws loose, but this jackass might be even crazier than I am. What else has he been doing down here?
They were old friends of mine.
I hear Mr. Bingo say behind me. I whirl around. I hadn't even heard the dude slip into the room. I might be fighting above my weight class here. Or maybe I'm just off my game. Mr. Bingo ignores me and takes a step towards the taxidermied people. He looks at one of them with something like pain in his eyes.
Apprentices, kiddo.
He says.
I taught them everything I know about what I do, but they thought they were better than me. They tried to hurt me, so I had to hurt them.
I blink at him. Don't call me kiddo, I say. Mr. Bingo smiles at me.
What?
He asks. Don't call me kiddo, I say matter-of-factly. I'm 20.
Of course,
Mr. Bingo replies.
but compared to me, you are a kiddo. You don't have a clue how the world works. Not the way I do, anyway.
I blink at him. I'm at a loss for words.
Have a seat.
Mr. Bingo says. He takes me over to 2 ornate armchairs. There's a table in between them. It has a wine bottle and 2 glasses on it. I suppose he'd been expecting me tonight. I'm again reminded of how out of my element I am here. There's also a cheese board. It has a knife sticking out of it. I let my gaze linger on the blade for a second before looking away. Mr. Bingo pours each of us a glass of wine and then sits down heavily. I'm wary of letting my guard down around him, and especially about drinking possibly poisoned wine. But I suppose if he wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. I sit down.
Cheers.
Mr. Bingo says, toasting me. He takes a hearty drink of his wine. I take a little sip.
Don't like wine?
Mr. Bingo asks, taking note of my distaste. I'm not 21 yet, I reply. He chuckles.
You break into a man's house, but you won't drink a little wine?
What does one of those things have to do with the other? I say flatly.
Fair enough.
Mr. Bingo replies with a roll of his eyes. He takes another drink. I notice he's ignoring the cheese and crackers. Why did you taxidermy them? I ask. Your former apprentices. Why did you stuff them? He shrugs.
Call me sentimental, but I couldn't just get rid of them. I needed to honor them.
I nod. What if the cops find out?
The cops? Forget them. They play checkers and I play chess. They'll never get me. Besides, the only person who knows about these four is you. And if you want to tell the cops about them, you'll have to admit you broke into my house.
A chill goes down my spine. The man has a point. He gives me a cold stare over his glasses.
Though I haven't decided yet whether or not I'm going to let you out of here.
I feel myself stiffening up. What do you want? Mr. Bingo smirks at me.
I've read about you in the news.
What do you mean? I ask, playing dumb. How could he possibly know?
You know what I mean.
He replies. Shit, he's good. I shake my head. You're lying. Nobody's been able to catch me.
Nobody but me.
Mr. Bingo replies, sitting back in his chair.
I'm smarter than whoever they've got tracking you. I know what you did to the widow Johnson and that poor young couple up at Lover's Lane. I guess you thought you could get away with it, but I saw how full of yourself you were the day after both killings. How you couldn't stop talking about them. What's more, you killed all 3 of your victims the exact same way. It's not hard to deduce it was you.
I'm surprised. I don't bother hiding it. Mr. Bingo doesn't notice. He seems more bored than anything at the moment. He keeps taking slow pulls of his wine as he slouches in his chair. The cheese and crackers continue to collect dust. I guess he thought maybe I would want some, but I'm not trying any unless he tries some. I know he has the advantage over me down here, but even so, I don't feel like taking that risk.
Besides,
Mr. Bingo adds, snapping me out of my reverie.
You've been writing essays all year about how Gatsby should have killed Tom so that he could have Daisy. I know. I'm your English teacher, remember? It's not hard to connect the dots.
Aren't you going to ask me why I did it? I ask. Why I killed those people, I mean?
What's the point?
He replies.
I'm willing to bet you did it to blow off steam. But I won't pretend to know. All my apprentices had a different reason.
So you found me out. What are you going to do? I ask flatly. Turn me in?
If I did, the police might be suspicious of me.
Mr. Bingo replies.
I would prefer to avoid them. I had to disappear once before. It was a hassle. I'd rather not bother with that again.
Mr. Bingo pauses to sip his wine for a while. I think to myself as he does, it's way too quiet down here. So then why haven't you killed me yet, then? I ask point blank. Mr. Bingo puts his glass down and looks at me again.
What did you think I was trying to teach my apprentices?
He asks. He smiles like a cat about to swallow a canary.
English?
I raise my eyebrows. You want to teach me how to kill people?
If you're willing. Otherwise, I can't let you leave.
He replies. I laugh. Killing people is easy. You stick the knife in and the blood comes out.
Do you know how to make your getaway?
He asks impatiently.
Do you know how to hide the body? Do you know how to pick up the perfect victim? This is your problem, kid. You think you're hot stuff, but really, you're just a dirt sandwich.
He sets his wine down in disgust. I glare at him. I don't need your help.
Then this was a waste of time.
Mr. Bingo replies. He gets up and takes a step towards me. I flinch away from him so hard that my chair squeaks on the ground. Wait, I say, don't do anything stupid. The man smiles at me.
Now we're getting somewhere.
He takes a few steps towards his taxidermied apprentices. I notice he's comfortable enough to turn his back on me. I glance at the knife that's stuck in the cheese board. If I want to do something to him, it's now or never. Now or never. Oh, what the hell. I'll wait and see what he does next. I have a feeling he's waiting for me to do something stupid anyway.
Have you ever heard of the judge?
He asks me. Who? I ask, subtly inching closer to the knife.
The judge. The old comic book villain.
Oh, him. Wasn't he based on a real guy? I ask.
Yes.
Mr. Bingo replies, looking over his shoulder at me. I smile at him, trying to play innocent, like I'm not dreaming of burying the knife in his back right this very minute. Oh God, I want to go home. If he notices anything, he doesn't say it. He turns back to his apprentices.
The judge was a special kind of killer. He only targeted those he saw as evil criminals and the like. What's more, he had special abilities. He'd fall into a vat of chemicals one day and come back out with unimaginable powers. He could outrun speeding cars, tear lampposts out of the ground, and jump into third-story windows.
Mr. Bingo glances back at me again.
But we don't need special powers to bring justice to this world, kid. You and me. All we need is courage. We can cull the unnecessary folks from this world to make room for those that will make it better. We can change things. We can reshape the earth, even if it's only one victim at a time.
This man really is crazier than me. And yet he has an odd allure to him. If life was a woman, this man would grab her by the waist and pull her against him. He's like that guy we learned about in his class, Gatsby. Although I doubt Gatsby ever stuffed dead corpses. I look at the knife again. I guess I may as well try my luck. I rip it out of the cheese board and dash towards him. He doesn't even bother turning around. Instead, he ducks to the ground. I trip over him like an idiot, dropping the knife and banging my head on the wall. I groan, rolling onto my back. Mr. Bingo has the knife in his hand, and he brings it down at my throat. But at the very last second, he stops. The blade only nicks the skin of my neck, making it bleed. I wince as I stare up at him. He smirks.
Join me, kid. Together, we can make our dreams come true.
What choice do I have? It's like this guy is not of this world. I'm in, I say resignedly. But as he pulls me to my feet and claps me on the back, I wonder how I can take his power for myself.
Now, for your listening entertainment, we have a story from the wonderful Imperial Invective called Solomon's Key, and this is read by Madame Raven and Midnight Chills.
Solomon's Key. I watched the boy with interest as he toyed around with the symbols on the floor. He had cut the inside of his forearm and was smearing the blood on the kitchen tile to create the summoning sigil. I blew out a tired breath over my bifurcated tongue and blinked through the nictinated membranes of my eye. It was going to be one of those nights. He was one of those people, the kind that just had to throw in the macabre touch to everything they did. Blood was uncalled for, frankly cliched as well. If he hadn't meant to, he would likely have tried to sacrifice a goat, too. However, looking over the apartment, it was clear that from his squalid living conditions, he likely couldn't afford a goat. He had likely spent his earnings on the black wax candles that had been placed around the circle. I could see him, but he couldn't see me yet. That was the problem with making the sigil too early. It opened a conduit through which I could see into the mortal plane. You'd be surprised how many times someone actually created a demonic sigil while trying to make a haunted park attraction look scary or a hot topic edgy. My summoning sigil is a fairly simple design after all. In this state, I could only watch. He still needed to invoke my presence. Hopefully he wouldn't try the summoning ritual in Latin.
TB Magnum, EhNoBehindYou, Signa Stellarum, Nigarum, Mi Vocarity Acamanu.
Shit. He was pacing back and forth, reading the words aloud as if trying to figure out the correct accents and inflections. Each attempt was somehow worse than the last. I tried my best to piece together the invocation and make sense of what he was trying to say, but it was jumbled like he'd plugged the words into a Google Translate. All around the 7th attempt, at butchering an already dead language, I grew tired of waiting and decided to step through. It was better to get this over with now than spend my entire night in this dingy apartment. I spoke. Seriously, you didn't even bother to translate it? TB Magnum, Immonicadum, Signa, Stellarum, Nigrarum, Mi vocare ti aca mena. This is in English. To you, the great not-to-be-named, signs of the Black Star, I summon you, Akamana. First off, I think you owe Lovecraft royalties for ripping off that line. Secondly, why would you call me one not to be named and then proceed to name me? What am I, Voldemort? Besides, if you knew you were going to butcher the language, why not just stick to invoking me with my sigil? He looked up from his phone where he had been Googling the words with a deer-in-headlights expression. I tend to get this look a lot at first. Summoners always have this image in their mind of a muscular, red-skinned demon with hooked claws and a goat head. I'm none of those things. God was my creator as well. Why would we be made in the same image of cutting claws, masticating mandibles, and grotesque sucking appendages? God had a pattern that he stuck with. Humans, demons, angels. We all look relatively the same, yet we're so different. I clarified for him. Think of it like this. If God is your father, then Satan is your cousin. Why would we look completely different from you?
So, you're like me?
I made a wry face and shook my head. You didn't summon me here to chat, did you? He spoke, his voice barely above a whisper.
You're bound to me. You must do my bidding.
I chuckled. That's not how it works. I stepped over the seal and brought myself closer to him. He stumbled back and toppled over a chair. He whimpered impotently.
But I had a demon trap. You were supposed to be trapped there.
Oh, that's the problem with writing in blood. One break in the pattern and it's all void. In this instance, it was those overpriced candles you likely picked up at Hot Topic, which resulted in breaks around the outer circle.
But please don't flay me and rape my corpse.
What? Why would I? Never mind. Not even going to touch that one. What purpose would you serve for me to kill you? Word of mouth gets around and suddenly summoning Akamana is akin to instant death? No, that's bad publicity. I'm here to make you a deal. You summoned me here for that, right? He paused for a moment, deciding to bury the initial fear, and says,
What do you want in exchange? My soul?
I laughed. Your soul? Sorry, but what the hell would I do with your soul? It's an insubstantial thing. It's about as valuable as your virginity. He winced. I had hit a sore topic. Your servitude and pledge are what really matter here. In exchange for my assistance, you will spread the word about me. There's power to be had in influence, and there is strength to be found in servitude of others. He spoke, anger tinging his voice.
And if I back out of the deal, what are you gonna do?
He was angry about the virginity comment. A virgin? Or possibly. You would regret it. I left it at that, knowing his imagination would fill in the blanks and paint torture worse than anything I could imagine. Man always did have a knack for ingenuity. He blanched at the thought. I knew he would be mine, and he would do exactly what I wanted. Only the small matter of the deal and its components. He paused as if weighing his words. He had an endless sea of choices before him, and the opportunity to select only one. Did he want power? Wealth? Knowledge? His hands clenched by his side. His cuticle turned white as he spoke. His anger was palpable.
I want you to torment someone for me.
I listened patiently as he vented vitriol.
Beth Gallagher. That bitch. I want her to suffer. I want her nights to be haunted. I want her to lie awake in her bed, wondering when it was in her life that everything went wrong for her. I want misfortune to dog her every step of the way until she is so beaten down that the thought of doing anything roils in her stomach like curdled milk.
He continued. His voice rose and turned bitter.
I want you to turn her dreams, hopes, and aspirations into ashes in her mouth. I want her to suffer every indignity imaginable. I want you to rot her womb so her children are stillborn and every conception aborts in the wasteland that her body has become. I want...
What did she do to you? His invective halted.
What does it matter? Do I need a reason to hate someone?
What a human thought. If God were still interested in what was going on down here, he'd weep.
Are you going to do what I ask, or do I have to summon someone else?
His attempt to force my hand would not go ignored or unpunished. I nodded my head and said, What you ask will be done. I will make Beth suffer innumerable horrors. Truly, the things you humans do because of love never ceases to astound me. He gritted his teeth so hard I thought they would shatter and chip in his mouth.
I loved her. She didn't love me.
You say loved her, but that's wrong. No one would do this to another person if they didn't still have feelings for them. Rejection and love, hand in hand, bred this. I stepped back into the ineffective demon trap, ready to be gone from this world. He said nothing, his mouth agape like a gutted fish gasping out its last moments. I didn't need to stick around. I would carry out my end of the bargain and hex this woman. He would spread word about me and convince more to summon me. He would lie awake at night with the realization that he had done all of this to a woman he loved. The more knowledge there was about me, the greater my influence would grow. Another thrall to evangelize my existence. The entire ordeal left me drained. It wasn't the energy I had exerted from being summoned. Slipping into and out of the world was like stepping through a pool of water. Easy, with no resistance. I was a welcome guest here. I had other reasons for my exhaustion. Humans have a tendency to do that to me. They can do something like that to the person they love. And yet they call us demons.
Now we continue with another story by EmpyrealInvective. This one is called How Does It End? And it is narrated to you by Lady Spookaria and Midnight Chills.
How Does It End? Written by EmpyrealInvective. Narrated by Lecter Black. Featuring Lady Spookaria. Eric listened to the clacking of keys on the computer. Each minute made him more anxious. The nervousness coiled up in his stomach and twisted something deep inside him. He wanted to get up and interrupt Jessica, but he knew that doing that would only set her back. He tried to focus on other things, but each pause in the cadence piqued his attention. He wondered if Jessica had finished writing for the night, or if something worse had happened, that she had hit that familiar wall known as writer's block. He tried to wait patiently, but it eventually became too much. Eric sat up from the couch and stretched. He had been on that couch for hours, waiting for her to finish writing for the day. He snuffed out the 5th cigarette he had had that day in the already overloaded ashtray. He slowly moved over to her and asked, "How's it coming along?" Jessica blew out a sigh and told him everything he needed to know in that moment. It was not going well. The computer screen confirmed that for him. She had been at the computer for most of Saturday, and she had barely read more than a paragraph. She would write a paragraph, pause to read it to herself, and then delete it. She would inch through, but nothing was ever satisfactory to her. When Jessica started writing months ago and asked for his opinion, he had just humored her and thumbed through the pages of her manuscript that she had printed out, not really reading them. He offered her platitudes and overgeneralized advice to keep her from realizing that he wasn't actually reading them. But something changed about a month ago. He couldn't even begin to explain what turn of phrase or play on words first caught his attention, but once it had him, it didn't let go. He plowed through 50 pages in a single day. He had to find out what happened next. It became a process for them. Eric would pick her up from work each day and fish to see if she had come up with anything new for the story while they were apart. They would eat dinner and discuss ideas for the plot. It quickly became all that they ever talked about. They stopped visiting with their friends and going out entirely other than to pick up food and go to their respective jobs. Every night he would wait for her to finish so he could hungrily tear through the new plot developments and character progressions she had come up with. At first, progress was quick. Jessica was about 100 pages into the novel, and it always seemed like she had new ideas and things for characters to say. It wasn't until 2 weeks ago that her progress began to slow. She was suddenly more reserved about her ideas, and the ones she did pitch to him seemed pretty generic. The sudden influx of 5 pages a day trickled down to 3, then to 1. And now he was lucky if she could even finish a paragraph in one sitting. With nothing else to talk about, they stopped talking altogether. It didn't take an insightful person to see that they were not good as a couple. Jessica was not really his type anymore, and Eric knew that anything he gave her was skin deep. She had a tendency to needle him with comments, and he tended to overlook her feelings when they were weighed against his. Even their lovemaking was a perfunctory and romanceless process. It was once comfortable, but now it was only worn out. They had started dating after college and either never really found the motivation to break it off. With these conditions, their toxic relationship persevered and shambled on. Jessica poked holes in him, and Eric neglected her emotions. He tried his best to sound convincing. "Keep writing. You just have to plow through."
I'm tired. Can't we just go to bed?
A spark of frustration flared up inside him. They had gone to bed without any real progress for days now, and that was something he didn't want to become a habit. He wanted her to finish it and give the novel a satisfying conclusion for all the characters. "Keep going. We can go to bed once you've finished with that chapter. I want to see how this section ends."
I'm just not feeling in the mood to write right now. Let's take a break.
A night ago, Eric had a dream about tying her to the chair in front of the computer for a few days. He would leave her arms free, of course. He still wanted her to be able to type. He would simply use up a few rows of duct tape around her torso and legs to keep her planted into the chair. He imagined how easy it would be to call work and tell them that they were taking a vacation to visit an imaginary sick relative. He could gag her if the need arose. He would keep her tied up until she finished writing. He would have to throw out clothes she soiled in the process and tear up the carpeting, but the story would finally be finished. Instead of waiting months, she could finish it in a few days. He would feed her. He wasn't cruel. On second thought, maybe he wouldn't. Maybe that was the incentive she needed to keep going. His focus was broken by Jessica.
Hey, you listening? Don't tell me you've gone all Rain Man on me. We've got all of Sunday. So, let's call it for the night and start fresh tomorrow.
Eric clenched his teeth. She knew that his brother was autistic. Now she was just trying to press his buttons. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction of hitting her again. The last time he did, she looked at him with a twisted and triumphant look plastered around her face. He apologized profusely, but she still kept that sick smirk. She knew she had won the argument by making him strike her. She had hobbled him by making him act like his father, someone he never wanted to be. He would not give her the satisfaction twice. He calmed himself down before answering, no.
You can't force me to keep typing.
The epiphany was sudden and settled on Eric like a 500-pound weight. Judging by Jessica's reaction, she had just had the same realization. She tried to move around him, but he blocked her path. She tried to push through him, but he planted his feet. Her anger exploded, and she shouted at him. Both Eric and the neighbors were used to that by now. They fought more and more each day. It was commonplace. It was a sad, accepted fact by their neighbors. They kept to themselves and expected the shouting to die down. What happened next was not expected. Jessica clawed out and caught Eric off guard. She raked her nails down his face and drew blood. She used this shock to quickly slip by him and run towards the bedroom. He recovered quickly and caught her around the waist before she could lock herself in. He pulled her back into the living room and threw her against the nearby wall. She tried to get up, but he pinned her down. In the truest expression of their relationship, she snarled at him.
Did your father teach you how to do that? Of course he did. Your whole family is fucked to the core. First he squirts an idiot into your mother, and then he makes an even bigger failure with you. He at least could make a kid. You're probably the reason why we couldn't conceive in the first place. You're the reason why the therapist advised me to start writing to keep my mind off the miscarriage.
In the most honest moment of their relationship, Eric shut her up. He pulled a nearby letter opener off the table and drove it into her chest. The moment took them both by surprise, but he recovered first. Lost in that instant, he muffled her mouth with his left hand and began repeatedly stabbing her in the chest. He kept going until the realization of what he was doing brought him back to the darkness, but it was too late. Eric scrambled off of her and dropped the letter opener onto the rug. Looking over her, he noticed that he had stabbed her over 6 times in his rage. He felt bile rise up into his throat, but he swallowed it back down. Jessica gasped weakly through the broken ribs and lacerated lungs. Any strength she had was stripped from her during the attack. Eric stroked the side of her face and in his desperation asked her, "How does the story end?" Jessica coughed up a small burble of blood in an attempt at a wry laugh.
It doesn't. It'll never end. I could write for years and never finish it. It's fitting for us. We only tread water in this relationship. We're terrible for each other and we both know it. We've been dragging each other down for a long time now.
Eric shut her up again. Once Eric was certain she was dead, he stood up. He left the edge of the letter opener in the hollow of her throat. He quickly moved across the room and returned to the computer. He only had a little bit of time. If he was lucky, his neighbors would assume it was another one of their squabbles and not investigate. Her work would be much harder to convince. He could tell them they were taking a few days off to visit a fabricated family member, but they would eventually get suspicious. He had a week at tops before they started asking questions he couldn't answer. He sat at the computer and looked at the screen. Maybe he could finish the story himself. He began typing. A few hours later, he noticed that the sun had risen. The blood from his hands stuck on the keys after they dried, but he continued typing. He became aware of the smell a few hours after that. Jessica had evacuated when she died, but he didn't have the time to try and clean up the mess. He only had a few days at best before someone was sent to investigate. He kept typing. The dull sensation of pain that began in his lower back slowly sneaked its way up his torso. It hurt to stay sitting, but he couldn't stop. He kept typing. The words clumsily spilled onto the screen and lay there heart-wrenchingly like a stillborn child. He kept typing. Days passed, but he didn't stop. The telephone rang, but he ignored it. He knew nothing good would come from answering it. He kept typing. The seat of the chair was soaked with sweat and a few other things he didn't want to think about. Thinking about them distracted him. He kept typing. The smell was now unbearable, and the pain radiated along his body like someone was constantly tearing into him with their nails. He kept typing. He looked up when he heard a knock on the door. He looked back down and continued typing. The knocks grew louder and were now accompanied by shouting. He kept typing. He heard the police throwing themselves against the door, but he kept typing. The door protested with a groan, but it would eventually relent. He kept typing.
Next up, Madame Raven and Sir Creepington tell us the story Imaginary Friend by Dark Sire 1.
For the early years of my daughter's life, she insisted on doing everything with her imaginary friends, and she had quite a few. One, she claimed, was an elephant. Another, a young girl with whom she played with in her room. I worried about her at first, but I soon learned that it wasn't harming anything. My wife, Christy, assured me that there was nothing to worry about. She played with them, and they seemed to keep her occupied most of the time. Every one of her birthdays, I hoped this phase would pass, but it never did. If anything, it got worse and worse. She got more and more friends, and how she described them got more and more disturbing. It went from fun characters that could have been from a cartoon or kids show, to being things that a kid shouldn't be able to describe. A man with a head sewn to his shoulder, a thing made of various body parts. We took her to a therapist, but it didn't help. The therapist said that it was probably just a phase that would pass soon. I hoped the same. But they got even worse from there. The day my daughter turned 8 years old, she said she had met a new friend. My wife and I were nervous. What would it be this time? We asked what their name was.
His name is Tim,
She said. At first, it sounded like she had made an actual friend. She had never really been that social. She preferred to hang out with her imaginary friends, rather than actual human beings. Had she finally grown out of the phase that we were all waiting for her to pass?
but he's done bad things.
She said, her tone growing darker. My wife and I exchanged glances. This wasn't the first time she had said something like this. Like what, honey? I asked gently.
He doesn't want me to say.
Well, can we meet Tim? As I said this, a shadow crossed over her face.
Nobody except me can ever meet Tim.
She said in a voice much too dark for an 8-year-old. We asked why, which we clearly realized was a mistake. My daughter shrieked and screamed that Tim said so. Then she stomped up to her room and locked the door. She finally came out for dinner. We didn't mention anything about her new friend. Instead, Once she had gone to sleep, we called the therapist and told her everything that had happened. Once again, she said it was probably just a phase. We didn't want to believe her, but then again, she was the expert here. None of us, not even my daughter, mentioned anything about Tim for the next week. But I did notice that she was acting differently. She didn't play with any toys. She usually just sat on her bed, looking up at the ceiling with a completely blank expression on her face. Finally, I decided that this needed to stop. Over dinner one night, I slowly and casually brought up her new friend. "So, how's it been going with Tim?" I asked between bites. Both my wife and daughter looked at me, but it was my daughter's look that made me go cold. I had never seen such a young girl, only 8 years old, glare with so much pure malice.
Don't bring him up, Daddy.
She said,
He will get you if you do.
This sent another wave of chills down my spine. What did she mean? I tried to shrug it off, but I had trouble sleeping that night. I had a terrible nightmare in which my daughter was holding hands with someone. A creature so incredibly tall, he had to crouch to be in her room with her. I couldn't see anything else before I woke up. When I did, I turned on the lamp immediately. The nightmare was so unsettling that I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night, instead opting to read a book by the light. All while I read, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. She was an imaginative kid. That was all. All of it was just in her head. Even so, I found myself wanting to peek into her room, just to make sure everything was fine. As I walked down the hallway toward her closed door, I heard something. Whispering from behind the door. My heart began to beat faster. Why wasn't she asleep? It was past midnight. Slowly, I opened the door, and the source of the whispering became apparent. My daughter was asleep in her bed, but by the foot of her bed, in front of her open closet, stood a figure. It was impossibly tall, leaning over her bed so far, its head was in front of hers. It had entirely blank features, and the whispering seemed to be coming from its head. I was frozen in fear. I couldn't move, no matter how much I wanted to yell at my daughter to wake up and run. I just stood there, and as I did, the whispering became clearer and louder, until the point that I could hear words coming out of the thing. They were low, dry, and calm, but they made me anything but. I shuddered when I heard my daughter's name being spoken by the thing, but I stayed perfectly still as the thing kept talking.
Anna, why did you tell them?
It said in its raspy voice. My daughter didn't stir, not even a little bit. The thing's head slowly turned toward the half-closed door, a cracking sound coming from its neck as it did so. It turned in an unnatural way, one that no living being could ever do.
Eavesdropping isn't nice.
It said. It took me a long second to realize that it was talking to me. At this point, I was so scared that I didn't care about anything but getting the hell into my room. I turned on my heels and sprinted down the hallway, faster than I had ever run in my life. Once I was in my room, I slammed and locked the door behind me. My wife stirred at the noise. She groggily looked over at me. When she realized that I had my weight against the door, she shot up.
What's wrong?
She asked, slightly panicked. I only managed to get a single word out through my fear. Tim. A confused look spread across her face.
Anna's imaginary friend?
She asked. I just shook my head. It took almost a half an hour for my wife to calm me down enough to be able to tell her what had happened. As I said what I had seen, my wife's face grew skeptical. She told me I must have had a nightmare, and that what I was saying was ridiculous. That morning, Anna was fine. Nobody mentioned anything about it. However, my wife and I got divorced soon after that night. I now live alone in an apartment building. Every night, I wake up and see that thing standing in the corner, blending in with the shadows. But I know it's him. He was waiting for me to tell someone about him. And now, I have. I can feel him behind me as I type this, growing slowly closer. He will punish me for talking about him, but I feel like this needs to be out there. I can see him in the reflection of my screen now, slowly approaching me. I feel his hand on my shoulder. I hope this post makes it out there.
We are slowly but surely coming to the end of tonight's entertainment, but we have 4 more stories to go before we leave you. Next up, we have Blind Date by the Mysterious Lurker, featuring the vocal talents of Spirit Voices and Baron Landred.
A Blind Date. Written by a Mysterious Lurker, and narrated by Spirit Voices and Baron Landred. I recently broke up with my girlfriend. It was a mutual decision after she commented she wasn't ready for a committed relationship. We hadn't been dating for very long, so I didn't feel overly bitter about it. However, I did get slightly bitter after she started to date someone else, and within 3 months, they became engaged. How could I not have some negative feelings over something like that? I complained to a friend of mine to just vent and wanted to drop the whole issue. A few days later, he proudly announced he gave a coworker my Instagram account to send me a message on, hoping we could arrange a date. I was a little annoyed by him. I know it was well-meaning, but I wasn't ready to date again just yet. I felt it would be rude to just dismiss his coworker entirely, so I just hoped she wouldn't bother sending a message. Unfortunately, I got a new notification in my DMs from her, introducing herself as Kitty. She did have a cute name going for her, so I answered back figuring she wouldn't be interested after speaking with me. Or, at the very least, my bland Instagram photos. Hey, sorry if Kevin pressured you into this. He can be pretty demanding sometimes, but he's an alright guy, I sent back to her. Oddly enough, a nervous feeling came over me when she responded quickly.
Try working with him. It's impossible to stay mad at him, though. Hey, can I ask you a question? Is your account named Count D_12 because you like vampires, or is the Count D for something else?
I paused to stare at the screen, the question turning in my head. I'm a bit of a nerd. I try not to show it unless other people say they're into the same thing I am. I only made this Instagram account to message other friends to keep track of what they're doing. Count D was a character from an older manga I read ages ago. I doubted anyone would ever pick up on that because of how poorly the series sold. Count D is a character from an old manga. Hang on, Kevin's sending me a message. I figured the moment I mentioned the word manga, she would become uninterested. I switched over to Kevin to see what he wanted. To my horror, he said he pretty much set up a date for Kitty and myself the next Friday night. I wanted to smack him. He should have at least waited for us to finish sending some messages before suggesting ideas. I saw she replied and quickly switched back to her. My nerves were on fire over the idea of seeing her in person after I outed myself as a weeb so soon.
Pet Shop of Horrors? Oh, I love that manga. So few people know about it. I got excited when I saw your username. Kevin asked if I wanted to see you Friday. I think he already told you. I said yes, but I understand if you're not ready to go out so soon after breaking up. He also told me that. Sorry. I'm recently single too. My last boyfriend wasn't very filling.
A second later, she sent another message before I could reply.
Was unfulfilling. Sorry, LOL.
The only thing more shocking than her knowing the series is that she agreed to go out Friday. I wasn't entirely ready for this date, but agreed to it. I mean, it's just a date. What was the worst that could happen? Friday night came faster than expected. I felt overly nervous over the entire thing, though I didn't expect anything to come of the night. I really wanted to be angry at Kevin for pulling this sort of thing. I showed up at the meeting spot early, the sun starting to set even though it was only 7. I grabbed a jacket just in case. We didn't talk ahead of time about what to do that night. Taking a walk in the park would be out of the question with the chills starting in the air. Kitty arrived shortly after me, her face bright with a smile that made her face almost glow. This girl was way out of my league. Her dyed red hair halfway down her back and styled perfectly. I nearly needed sunglasses when she got close enough to shake my hand. I didn't know how Kevin worked with such a bright and cheery person all day.
Hey, nice to meet you. Kevin said a lot of good things about you,
she said and shoved her hands into her pockets. I was so stunned by her appearance I needed to collect myself. I was worried she might be, well, not as pretty as her few profile pictures would suggest. I now saw camera didn't do her justice. Thanks. I mentally kicked myself for that poor response. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat? I quickly asked. An odd look came into her eyes. She did look hungry, and it made me so nervous I took a step back. I didn't think anything I said sounded that suggestive.
Yeah, I could eat.
Her smile turned into something else, but only brief enough to let me assume I imagined it. Not me, I hope, I joked with a very nervous laugh. Her expression faltered. Now she looked to be the nervous one. I really wasn't good at this whole dating thing if I made her this uncomfortable so quickly.
Oops, the cat's out of the bag. I'm secretly a man-eating monster going from job to job, luring victims to me before moving on. It's a hassle, but hey, it's a living.
She said with a shrug and started to laugh. I had no choice but to join her in a very awkward spell of laughter. She noticed how poorly the joke went over and let the laughter die out.
Anyway, there's a good restaurant just on the other side of the park if you want to get dinner,
Kitty offered, pretending as if the previous exchange didn't happen. It's getting a little cold. We could take an Uber, I offered. She shook her head and started towards the trail, her bright hair shining brilliantly in the setting sun.
Waste of money. It'll be a quick walk. You won't feel the cold in a few minutes, I promise.
I didn't have any reason to refuse. I started after her and quickly caught up to her pace. She was tall and we were pretty much the same height. We didn't talk for the first minute. It felt like the silence went on forever. I needed to get the conversation going again. She adjusted her hair and I noticed her earrings. They were a set of golden triangles that sparked a memory of another older series. Have you read Demon Detective Nero? I asked, hoping she knew the English name because I was terrible at saying any Japanese titles. She stopped in her tracks, face flush, and at first I thought she might be angry over something. I froze with her, my heart nearly stopping at the reaction.
Hold on. You know about Pet Shop of Horrors and Nero? Do you have any idea how many people I've met that know about both, but also like them?
Kitty sounded very excited over now being able to talk about 2 series she enjoyed with another person. When she spoke, I thought I saw a flash of sharp teeth. The dim light must be playing tricks on my eyes. She'd taken her hands out of her pockets in her excitement. I noticed how sharp her fingernails looked. That wasn't really too strange. A lot of girls got fake long nails. I guess we have something to talk about over dinner, I replied. Her face fell a little for some reason. It was as if she really didn't want to go through with the date. We had barely spoken with each other, so I didn't blame her. I almost wanted to offer us to meet up at a different time after we got to know each other better. She had already started walking again, and I moved to catch up. We kept moving, another awkward silence growing between us. The set sun making parts of the path very dark between the sparse light posts. Kitty walked ahead, her form disappearing in the darkness. I kept walking, figuring I would see her after my eyes adjusted. The path looked empty when I could see again, causing me to panic. I frantically looked around, worried something might have happened to her. When something bad happens, I always assume there'd be a warning first. Like how movies build up to jump scares with tension along with music cues. You're anticipating the scare and almost feel relieved after it happens. That's not at all how it happens in real life. I turned looking for Kitty, my eyes landing on a large, dark figure in the path. My heart stopped in my chest as my brain desperately tried to pretend it hadn't just found the girl I'd been following behind a second beforehand. That comment about being a monster wasn't a joke at all. My brain couldn't even process most of it. The fear cut down to my very core and unlocked some sort of primal feeling that was nearly bred out of me after so many generations of living in cities with other people. Our species nearly forgot what lurked in the dark, and how ancient and inhuman those monsters could be. My mouth dropped open with a short scream, spilling out at the deeply disturbing mass of teeth and clawed arms.
Oh, shush, don't be like that. I like you, so I'll be kind.
Kitty spoke, her voice, oddly enough, sounding so sweet it made my feet want to stay near her. I barely choked out a word.
I could make this hurt. It feels like a waste to kill you, but I need to eat, you know? It'll be like falling asleep under a pile of blankets on a cold, rainy day, or sinking into an ice bath. Wouldn't that be nice? Don't you think you've earned something that relaxing?
All the strength left my body. I became helpless to her words, the fear still deep in my stomach, but my mind unable to act on it. So many sharp hands came crawling over my limbs to keep me still, their grip just tight enough to slightly hurt. The jacket she wore when we met looked too big for her. Maybe she kept a trophy from each meal, and my spring coat was going to be added to that collection. Suddenly, those hands stopped holding the jacket open. Whatever spell this monster had over me broke. I wanted to struggle, and yet knew it would be a wasted effort.
You like Mononoke?
She asked, and her voice changed back to a casual tone, not the one she used to lure in victims. As much as I wanted to beg and cry for her to let me go, I pushed those feelings down to nod. I'd forgotten I'd thrown on an old shirt I'd gotten from a convention a few years back. The image faded, but still clear enough to see the main character of an anime no one really cared about. I figured if she liked pet shops, she might like this anime as well. At the very least, it was a good conversation starter for the date, and the shirt may have saved my life. New movie's coming out, I said, voice shaking. The monstrous shape in front of me paused. Kitty debated on something, and finally drew all her hands back. In one swift motion, she stepped into the light in the regular, pretty human form she used to lure in victims. She started to mutter to herself and kick at the lamppost so hard it shook each time.
You are making this very hard on me.
I'm not overly upset over that fact, I replied, still shaken. I thought that might get me eaten for sure. Instead, a smile came over her face. I somehow dodged being eaten, at least for now. Would she want to keep me around now that I knew her secret? Then again, I could tell everyone she was a monster that ate people, and not a single person would believe me.
Listen, I'm not really looking to date anyone. I think it's pretty clear that I only wanted to eat you. But I also really do want to have someone to talk about these old series with. Considering you saw what I really look like, I can understand if you want to get as far away from me as possible.
I carefully looked around as if this was some sort of trap. That maybe she wanted to get my hopes up and then come crashing down to kill me just when I thought I made it out safely. Are you just saying this to eat me later? Or kill me after we finish talking about all the series we like and have in common? I asked carefully.
Nah, I have a lot of other food options. I don't mind keeping you alive. As long as you're okay with being just friends who talk about this stuff. I've told guys I have no interest in a relationship right off the bat, but months down the line, they get all pissed off I haven't slept with them after we've talked so much. Ugh, I eat those types. So don't pull that kind of crap, and, we're good.
That's gross. Do guys really do that? I said, my fear slowly fading. Her face lit up again, making me almost forget what that cute mask kept hidden. I honestly didn't want to jump into dating so soon. And I didn't really think Kitty was cute in a girlfriend sort of way. More like a sister type. A person I would never consider going out with.
I stay well fed. You have no idea how many terrible guys are out there. Mind you, I am looking for the bad ones, so I'm bound to come across the trash. I wasn't even going to agree to see you, but Kevin is pretty persistent.
I nodded, knowing how well-meaning Kevin acted to the point it got annoying. A sharp wind blew, making me zip up my jacket. I stood, considering what just happened. Kitty wasn't human, but also wasn't a threat to my life at the moment. Would I be a terrible person if I stood by and let her eat others? Could I sleep at night knowing I could do nothing to save innocent men from being killed by her? She let me stew in my thoughts, her eyes on her phone and making a disgusted face that made me question what caused that kind of reaction.
I have a page up, and I put my age as 14 on the profile. I don't even have that many photos, just like a few of my face. And one dude just sends me a full body nude in a pose you don't even want to know about. Wearing a wedding ring and everything. I'm totally eating him. Oh, speaking of eating, do you still want to go for dinner? I wasn't lying about a restaurant being on the other side of the park.
The whiplash between the 2 points faded pretty fast. I found myself smiling over the whole ordeal. I nodded and let her start walking again to guide us to what she called the best ramen place in town. I should have run for the hills, and yet I went through with a friend date with an actual monster. She let me take a brief glance at the type of daily messages she received, and my feelings on her eating innocent humans faded a little. That night, I found out there are true monsters in this world. There are other monsters that hunt them. We parted from each other, promising to go out for ramen again.
I'll pay next time, as an apology for the whole, trying to eat you thing.
Kitty commented, just before her Uber pulled up. Are you being nice, or fattening me up? I joked, wondering if that sort of comment might be too soon.
Wouldn't you like to know?
She smiled in a way that showed off all of her very sharp teeth. I suppressed a shudder and waved when she left. I didn't die, and found a friend to talk with my very niche interests with. I'm going to have to think of a way to thank Kevin, without telling him I nearly became an unhappy meal.
Now we have a story by OhNoBehindYou called It's Cold in Here, featuring spirit voices, Musie's Modern Dreadfuls, and yours truly.
Losing your job can be devastating. Getting evicted a month later is heartbreaking. And doing it all as a single parent seems almost impossible sometimes. Growing up, I thought my life would be perfect at this age. Loving spouse, nice house, and healthy kids. Life has a way of throwing you curveballs, though. Your spouse dies young. The house is taken by the bank. You lose your career, then the crappy job you took afterwards. All that remains for us is the family van and a few bags full of clothes and toys. Now we're heading cross-country. I hope to find a job further west, somewhere where the cost of living is a lot lower. There might be room for us at a shelter when we get out there, until we get on our feet. The whole trip out there, though, we're living in the van. Every night is a new set of problems. Lots of times it's cops or business owners telling us to move along. But other nights, I need to move us to keep the kids safe. Once there was a sketchy man watching my kids more than I liked. He followed us for at least an hour. In the shadows, he watched our van. It looked like he was tucking in his shirt. He wasn't. I moved us along. A few nights ago, there were 2 women stumbling past our van. Vodka bottles fell out of one of their purses. They caught sight of us as they picked up the tiny bottles.
Hey, do you got like $20?
One of them said, with slurred speech. I shook my head. They started to approach the van.
Come on, I'll pay you back. Maybe just like 5?
I locked the door when they were almost at arm's length.
Oh, so you're a fucking snob, huh? You think you're better than us.
My kids started to scream as the women started to pound on the windows. The engine roared to life, but they didn't stop. As I sped away, one of them fell to the side, while the other ran after us at surprising speed. Shh, it's okay. It's okay, we lost them, I said, trying to console my crying children. We drove for a few hours until we reached a new city. There were streets lined with vehicles that offered the perfect cover. Some of the others were probably people like us. The others were out partying in the bars and clubs nearby. Hopefully they weren't like the women we saw earlier. Okay, now you guys, wrap up in your blanket and your sleeping bags. We have an early start tomorrow. It took them a while to doze off, but they finally did. I stared at the ceiling of the van, hoping against hope there was something out west for us. I tried to wrap up tight in my blanket. Past experience has taught me that I don't have the luxury of using a sleeping bag like the kids. Sometimes we have to move along, and other times, like tonight, we have to make a quick getaway. Frost was collecting at the edge of the windshield. A chill ran up my spine, and it caused me to shiver. When I exhaled, my breath formed a visible plume.
Oh, it's cold in here,
an adult voice said. I looked back to see my children sleeping, and a shadowy figure seated behind them. My heart was pounding in my chest. The kids didn't wake up when the intruder spoke.
Don't worry, the kids are sound asleep,
the voice said. Normally that would comfort me, at least a little, but I could make out a faint grin within the shadows. What do you want? Who are you? There was a shakiness in my voice, caused by both cold and fear.
It's not about what I want, it's about what you want. I'm here to give you whatever you want.
The voice was smooth, but menacing. The shadows cloaked the speaker's form, and its voice offered no clues either.
Is this better?
The voice said, this time from the passenger seat next to me. At first, I was startled by the words coming from right beside me as I stared at the speaker in the back. But when I did a double take, the speaker was no longer there. It was as if they had teleported next to me, or were in 2 places at once. From the new position, the speaker's appearance was revealed by a nearby street lamp, both beautiful and horrid. There were attractive features, but the structure was somehow off. The skin was white, a pallor that hinted at some sort of illness, perhaps even a terminal one. The speaker's hair was black. It had all the makings of being beautiful, glorious even, but was filthy instead. No doubt the speaker was at least 6 feet tall standing up, with long limbs that held frightening strength despite their delicate appearance. The irises and pupils were a stunning black, but the whites of the eyes were so bloodshot it looked like every vessel was about to burst, or already had. The eyes examined me with a hungry glee. A grin revealed a mouth of perfectly straight teeth. However, the teeth were either broken or fangs of some sort. The thing was beautiful, of indistinguishable gender, but it only seemed human. The speaker was not he, or she, or they, but it. It appeared youthful but looked dying and seemed older than anything. The thing had no race, no age, no gender. It was everyone and no one. Who are you?
It's as I said. I'm someone who has the power to give you whatever you want.
The speaker balled its long digits into a fist. When it opened them up again, a wad of cash was in its palm.
Money, shelter, clothes, medicine, fame, a better ride than the family van. It's all yours and more for the asking.
Right. And what is it exactly you want for all this and more? An expression of concern cast over its face.
Don't you want these kids to grow up in safety and comfort? Shouldn't they have all the joys and opportunities you had when you were their age? You've all had so much terrible luck. Why should they suffer any longer? Why not put down roots here? Have a nice big house, a nice car. With all the nice clothes and tech I give them, these kids are sure to be popular at school. No more kids picking on them for ratty shoes and busted phone screens.
For a moment, I envisioned this life for my kids. No living on cereal and ramen. Fast food wouldn't be fine dining. Their phones would hold a charge, and their clothes wouldn't be in tatters.
You might even find someone new here. You never know.
That jarred me out of my daydream.
All this I will give you,
it said. A distant memory popped into my head. My feet were dangling over the edge of a pew. Reverend Marsters was speaking about temptation. If I just bow down and worship you, I said.
Well,
the thing replied, still grinning.
That's a start.
You're not. You can't be. I stopped.
Believing in God, in Santa Claus, in the Nazarene. A common thing this day and age, but it's always been common around this time of year.
Ironic, I said.
Isn't it just?
The way it said, "That's a start," struck me most. What else did all of this entail? Did I have to die? Was one of my kids supposed to suffer a horrible fate? Was I going to burn in hell or something?
I know what you're thinking. What's this handsome devil want in exchange for all that I desire? Oh, don't worry, we'll iron out the details later.
So, you are the devil. The thing kept smiling its awful grin at me. The devil? Huh.
What? Are you missing the pointy beard and the pitchfork?
No, it's just that I stopped believing you existed a long time ago. I stopped believing in a lot of things.
I mean, I get that. It's all very reasonable. And you're all so reasonable.
Maybe, but it's like this. Here you are, in my hour of need. When I need to make a better life for my kids, when I want creature comforts.
Well, it's not like Santa is going to fill your stocking. And, hey, God, doesn't look like he's around, does it? I mean, when's the last time you had a prayer answered, if ever?
Yeah, but that's just it. I didn't ask for you, either. In fact, you kind of just showed up.
I could feel your need.
You think this is the first time I felt need?
Well, you lost.
Yeah, I did. And I didn't see you at the funeral.
When the back hit...
Took our house? Or when we got evicted from our apartment? Didn't see you then either.
Well, it's just that now...
Now what? I'm desperate? I'm vulnerable?
What are you talking about?
And another thing, why me? Huh? You're the devil, aren't you? Why aren't you tempting some politician or some tycoon or something?
What makes you think I haven't already?
Yeah, maybe a few of them. But lots of them are monsters too, just not the same breed as you. But they gain money and power by making shady deals with desperate people who don't know any better. Sound familiar?
Right. Little apes with little souls convinced they're as logical as the machines they build.
Yeah. Then again, you came to me because I need heat. I need food. I need a roof over our heads. That's cheap to someone like you. My life, my soul, my kids, a good life, a reasonable life. That's easy. So, are you here because those big names have an insatiable appetite, or because you don't have the power to give me that kind of life? Because you promised me cash and fame and all that, but I don't think you deliver.
I should rip you to shreds after you watch me kill your wretched little children.
For a moment, I was terrified. After all, this monstrous thing just threatened to kill me and my children. But there was something deep within me that was just tired. Tired of the promises. Tired of the threats and the occasional follow-through. God, I'd had enough. So I replied in a way that now seems foolish, but, well, at least it was honest. If you were going to kill us, you would have done it already.
Excuse me?
You heard me. If you were going to kill us, you wouldn't be sitting here trying to make a deal. And if you were the devil, why are you sitting in a van pitching to a broke, homeless single parent? Yeah, I know why. Because you aren't the devil. You're a fucking franchisee. I mean, you're clearly a demon or something like that, yes, but I know an agent when I hear one. You don't own the bank. You're just the asshole calling to tell me the bank's gonna take my house. The thing bared its teeth and started to raise a claw. But then it faltered, looking around, then reconnecting its gaze. It didn't have that sleazy charm anymore. It had lost its confidence. That's what I thought. The real devil is sitting somewhere enjoying the ill-gotten gains he rakes off of your meager deals. You're a pawn. A stooge, a middleman, a scrub. At that moment, I was yelling at every banker, every repo man, call center rep, and piece of shit who took everything from us. And I wasn't scared anymore. Not of this demon. Both its frightening and attractive features seemed to wane. The thing was angry, but uncertain.
You are a waste of my time.
The thing said with a hiss.
Freezing here for all I care, but remember you could have had everything, and now you have nothing.
You know, you say, where's God? Where's Santa? Where's anyone else? Well, I didn't believe in you, and you still came. Maybe they will too. And even if they don't, I don't need to believe in any of you. I just need to believe in us.
Believe all you want. You have nothing. Your children will suffer, and it will be all your fault. You may not take the deal, but I don't give up so easily.
The street lamp flickered, and then everything went black. That's it, I thought. My reckless talk was finally going to get us all killed, here in the dark. But then the light started to come back. The edges of the windshield were still frozen, and the figure was gone. Immediately, I turned around to check on my kids.
You swore.
I did. They both looked at me with uncertainty.
So, is that gonna come back?
I don't know, baby, but even if it does, we're gonna turn it away, okay? No matter what it promises, it is not worth it. They both nodded. I'm serious. We're gonna turn it away. Everybody in? We all put our hands together, like at the end of a huddle, and shot them up. We're still heading west, slowly, but surely. There's still drunks, perverts, and criminals out here on the road. Still demons, too. It came to see me again a couple times, but it never did stay long. It even tried its sales pitch on my kids. Puppies, iPads, a nice big house, the works. So far, they've said no. I told the kids that even if we're still in the van, we are going to celebrate Christmas. Pretty sure I caught them writing letters to Santa, too. I even heard one of them praying when they thought I was asleep. Why not let them believe? If demons can hear their pleas, well, who says no one else will? And honestly, they can believe whatever they want to believe. Just as long as they always believe in us.
Our penultimate story this evening is written by Jordan Grupe. It's called My Aunt Recovered a Very Unusual Meteorite, and it features the vocal talents of Musie's Modern Dreadfuls, Crazy Ken's Storytime, and Madame Raven.
My aunt recovered a very unusual meteorite. It's changing her, and not for the better.
Your aunt is so weird. Why are we doing this again?
Christine asked me, half kidding. I couldn't help but be a bit annoyed. Margie was my aunt. I was allowed to make fun of her. Everybody else wasn't supposed to. But everyone else did mock her. Constantly. The whole sprawling community seemed to think she was a joke. She was a disgraced scientist who had been kicked out of her professorship at MIT. She returned home to our mountainous region of Western Canada due to a total lack of job opportunities in her field. She had been blackballed by the entire scientific community. At least one would think that if you searched her name online. She essentially lived as a hermit now, secluded in her rickety old home in the woods halfway up Mount Dynasty. It was rigged up with an assortment of odd inventions that functioned like Rube Goldberg machines to keep her life running in its slipshod way. Picture Rick Moranis in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and you'd be on the right track. Or maybe Wallace and Gromit, since she had a dog who served as a well-trained assistant and a loyal companion to her. We were driving up there to see her. and I was doing my best to navigate the wandering forest road. I got out every so often to move fallen tree branches, a further indication that no one had been up there to visit her but us. There had been a big storm a couple of days prior. I was concerned that it had knocked out her power and that she could be in trouble, since she hadn't been returning my phone calls since then. I'm just worried about her, the way she sounded on the phone the other day, and now she's not even picking up when I call. I want to check in on her quickly, and then we can go, okay? Christine went back to looking at her phone, scrolling through stories from other people's lives and reading about toxic relationships on some website that seemed to specialize in that.
I can't believe this guy. His wife works and does everything around the house. Cleaning, laundry, the works. And all he has to do is cook. And he just makes mac and cheese for dinner every night. Then he gets mad when she asks him to cook something else for a change. What an asshole.
Are you reading more of those stories again?
I can't help it. People are terrible, you know that?
Yeah, I know. The bouncing up and down of the vehicle as it went over the roots, rocks, and potholes eventually became too much for her to bear, and she put her phone in her coat.
What did she say again?
Huh?
The other day when she called. What did she say that freaked you out so much?
Said there was some asteroid or meteor or something that had come down from the sky, that there was a loud boom and everything lit up bright green for a few seconds.
She's probably high on mushrooms. Again. Remember last year when we drove all the way out here because she said her water had turned purple?
Yeah. I mean, she didn't sound too disjointed this time, but she did say she was going to go look for a meteor up in the mountains.
I mean, if it was a meteor, that would be cool. But why would the sky turn green? I saw that dash cam video from Russia where the meteor lit up the sky, but it turned white, not green.
I don't know. Oh, here it is finally. It made me nervous to get out of the car, but then I saw Margie walking towards us too, and my concern overtook my sense of caution. She was also glowing, just slightly, that same eerie green glow.
Hey, Jason! Nice of you to come all the way up here to see your dear old Aunt Margie. I missed you too.
She was rambling under her breath and muttering so quietly I couldn't make out the words. Before I could stop her, she embraced me in a hug and squeezed me tightly for a few seconds before moving on to give Christine a big kiss on the cheek and a bear hug as well.
Come on inside. I've got coffee brewing and I've made a few sandwiches for lunch.
Christine looked over at me nervously, and I mouthed something wordlessly to her about how we'd only stay for a few minutes. The three of us walked inside with Scout luminescing at our heels. My aunt's faithful dog was making strange noises that weren't quite barks or wolves, but sounded almost human, like he was trying to say something. Run was probably what he was trying to say in retrospect. It came out something like, roof. We got inside the house and I immediately noticed an odd humming sound that seemed to be emanating from somewhere in the basement, where Margie's lab and office were located. What's that sound, Aunt Margie?
Oh, just the downstairs fridge acting up again probably. Nothing to worry about. Now, come on over to the table and have a seat for a few minutes.
Plates had already been made up for us with egg salad sandwiches on them, chips piled high, and coleslaw. It was like she had been expecting us. The coffee pot was lifted from its spot by a robotic arm which proceeded to pour it into cups without spilling a drop. Her technology seemed to be running much more smoothly than my last visit, when I had suffered first-degree burns after one of her robots served hot tea all over my lap. With my mouth full, I decided to address the green glowing elephant in the room, reluctantly. What's with the whole green glow thing you got going on there? Great sandwiches, by the way. Top notch. You really outdid yourself. Christine nodded and said,
Mm-hmm.
with her mouth full.
Oh, thanks. Glad you like 'em. I guess the whole glowing green business started when I brought that meteor back from my hike up the mountain. It's down in my lab where I've been running various experiments with it. I guess I hadn't really given it much thought until now. I've been too busy. Since that night, I've been having a million different ideas.
Her eyes looked slightly manic as she paced, talking about the night she brought the meteor back. Soon, she was rambling quietly under her breath again, and I asked her what she was saying since I couldn't understand it.
Nothing. Do you want to see it? It's going to change everything.
Despite part of me growing increasingly panicked and terrified, more by the second, I felt an overwhelming urge to relax and calm down. I couldn't understand where it was coming from, but it was suddenly impossible to ignore. I can't explain why, but suddenly I really did want to see it. An uncomfortable desire was inserted deep within my mind by something powerful beyond my understanding. Sure. Yes, I would love to see the meteor. The words came out of my mouth effortlessly and without deliberation. No, this isn't right. None of this is right. My terrified thoughts shouted in protest.
Yes, I would also like to see,
Christine said in a monotone voice. She took Christine's hand, then led us down to the basement into her lab. Despite the darkness, the whole space was glowing green, as if a bright fluorescent light was shining from somewhere in the depths of the basement. Things like veins or tree roots grew along the walls and ceiling everywhere, extending outwards from the lab space. They were growing insidiously, their spread barely perceptible to the naked eye as they took over the basement, a subtle green glow barely noticeable within them. As we got into the lab proper, I saw a much brighter glow emanating from something in the corner where the roots were spreading out from. It looked like an eyeball, enveloped in roots and webbing, pulsating with energy and emitting a low hum that rattled my fillings in my teeth and made my eyes water.
This is my baby. It's giving me all sorts of ideas on how to make things better. Do you feel it? Filling up the dark spaces in your mind? It'll make a nest there and live with you always. You will glow with the warmth of its power.
The words hit my mind and I felt spikes of terror running like knives down my spine. My breath was coming in ragged bursts and I suddenly felt sick, like I wanted to vomit. But all of these urges were being supplanted by something else. We walked over towards the meteor and I saw it was pulsating as we drew near. I heard foreign thoughts enter my head spoken in an alien language, which I did not understand at first, but then it became clear. Everything became clear. The pulsating, glowing thing on the table that was a giant green eye looked towards me. It reached into my mind and I felt it probing and pulling my thoughts, putting things back how it preferred and moving on to other sections of my memories. My hidden desires, my every shameful secret, uncovered and exposed to a great, powerful green spotlight that shone into my consciousness and filled it with new thoughts, new theories, new insights, and plans. It began to insert itself there, and I felt a warm presence fill my being. There were veins extending out from the meteor and attaching themselves to my feet, crawling up my legs, and then after some length of time had passed, feeling like an eternity and a second all at once. They were going into my eyes, my mouth, my nose, and ears. I felt a tingling tip searching and prodding and heard the soft rustling of them going into my skull through my ear canals. Part of my mind felt terrified still, but that frightened, screaming voice in the back of my mind was becoming a bit easier to ignore now.
See? I told you! Do you hear it whispering to you, Jason? It has so many plans for us. It's going to make us better. Just give in to it.
Suddenly, everything had a green glow to it. I realized as I walked back to the car with Christine by my side that it was not the world, but us that was now humming and glowing green with alien energy that invaded our bodies. No, not invaded. That's not the right word. Yes, it is. They're attacking you. They're taking over. Don't you see? My mind was screaming now. Screaming. Trying to convince me now that we were away from its power source. That this wasn't right. Scout was tugging at something on my leg and I saw it was a root from the meteorite. He was pulling at it with his teeth, and as it came free from my skin, I felt it loosen its grip on my mind slightly as well. The dog ripped another piece free. I had a sudden sense of terrified panic again, overwhelming this time. I reached up and felt foreign roots in my head and began to pull them off like a scab, one that hasn't quite healed yet, and pulls off the skin with it, causing blood to well up beneath. I pulled more of the roots from my face and felt them tugging on my brain as I ripped them out through my nose and out of my ears. They scraped like fishhooks and screamed in high screeching wails that pierced my mind as I tore them from my body and stomped on them with my boot, silencing them. Scout was pulling at the ones that had ensnared my wife's leg, and Christine followed my lead. As we tore the green glowing roots from our bodies, I felt my mind shouting in triumph. Then I heard my aunt screaming as if in pain. She came running out of the house, her nose bleeding. She screamed,
"What did you do to my babies?"
Her hair was askew and she looked terrified and angered, hurt and offended. She was carrying a large honey rifle in her hands.
Oh, fuck!
Christine tore the last piece of the alien growth from her hair, and I saw it had left her scarred and bloodied. We ducked into the car, and I heard a shot ricochet off a tree nearby, and I saw my aunt reloading her gun. I turned the key in the ignition and backed up out of the driveway as fast as I could, just barely avoiding another shot from her rifle that hit my rearview mirror, but at least it missed us. Nearly going off the road, I managed to turn around the bend and saw her chasing after us through the trees, still trying to shoot at us. Spinning the car around quickly at the first intersection, I managed to get us driving forward instead of in reverse. We drove away at high speed, and eventually my heart began to slow down ever so slightly, and I took a few seconds to catch my breath. That's when I heard the panting noise from the back seat, and I looked behind me to see a glowing green canine sitting there.
I couldn't just leave him there,
said Christine after seeing the expression on my face. Since that woman back on Mount Dynasty really isn't my aunt anymore, but something else entirely now, I don't feel safe bringing Scout back there. At the same time, I'm not too sure about keeping him at our place. I mean, I love dogs, but the telepathic alien radiation might be a bit of a problem. He seems like he feels right at home at our place, though. He's already putting down roots.
Collectively, we would like to thank you for joining us this evening. And we round off with one more story. This one was written by me and features me on vocals, and is called Young Girl Shouldn't Wander the Woods Alone at Night. It gets dark very early this time of year this far north. By 4 p.m. the sun's already set and dusk is upon us. Definitely not the ideal conditions for a girl who looks as young as I do to be walking home alone. The route that I'd chosen from the junior high school to the house was particularly off the beaten track and took me through several tranquil and deserted areas of town. No parent with even a shred of love in their heart for their child would allow them to make this walk at any time of the year, let alone in the depths of winter. It was just after I'd passed the cemetery and was about to turn onto the path through the woods that I became aware of his presence. At this point, he was what you would consider a safe distance behind me. I didn't want to turn around and look directly at him. Still, I could tell from the heavy footfall of his steps and the excited nature of his breathing that he was about 30 or 40 feet away. There were no other people around, and this road was a dead end with no houses on it, meaning that the chances of someone driving by were minimal. I was acutely aware that it was just him and me. Despite many thoughts running through my mind at that moment, one above all was controlling me. If this situation is going to go down the way that I think it will, I'll need to make a move right now. I started to increase my pace, not so much that it would be immediately apparent, but enough that I would significantly increase the distance between him and me. Unless, that is, he really was following me and altered his speed to keep up. Sure enough, within a couple of seconds, I sensed him breaking into a slow jog in order to catch up and close the distance between us. Okay, Carmilla. Time to make a choice. Do I run or do I turn and confront this man? I was right at the head of the woodland park at this point, so I decided to turn around. "Hello, mister. Can I help you with something? Are you lost?" I detected the slightest hint of surprise that I'd acted in this way. Still, he quickly regained his composure and continued his slow approach. "Hey there, little girl. I was just out here looking for my dog. I think he went into these woods. Do you want to help me find him?" He was smiling at me now. "What's your dog's name?" I asked. "What? Your dog's name? What is it? If I'm going to help you find him, I need to shout his name." Yeah, his name's Fred." Oh, was he surprised by my question, or had he hesitated because he'd needed to make up a name? "Well, I'm kind of scared of dogs. I think I'm just going to go home. I'm sorry I can't help you." "Oh, can I at least walk you home? Which way are you headed? It's dark out here and not safe for little girls like you." He was edging ever closer to me now and had a big, creepy smile plastered across his face. "Oh, I live just on the other side of these woods. Trust me, I can make it home just fine." "I'd still like to walk with you if that's okay. I mean, I'm sure my dog is in there somewhere." His icy blue eyes were laser-focused on mine now. It almost felt like he was trying to hypnotically control me with his gaze. "Well, if you really think Fido's in there, I guess you should look for him." "Fido's a crazy old mutt," he said. "I'm sure I'll find him in there." There is no dog. This man definitely means trouble. Time to take action. I turned and started running into the woods. While I had a couple of seconds head start on him, the fact is that the body of a 13-year-old girl can't run as fast as a fully grown man. He caught up with me ridiculously fast, so quickly in fact that we were still within the view of the road. The street lamp gave off enough light for us to be seen by a passerby if one were to approach. "What did you run off for?" he asked. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Sorry, mister. I just got scared at the thought of your dog running around in here. I got bitten by something pretty nasty when I was younger, and the thought of it happening again freaks me out." "Okay, I understand. Let's keep walking, and I'll keep you safe from any stray dogs. Hey, are you hungry? I have some food I could share with you. Let's find a nice place to sit down and eat." "What do you have?" I was kind of hungry as it happened. Delicious homemade spaghetti and bolognese sauce. Let's go a bit further into the woods, and then I'll share it with you." He didn't have a bag with him, and there was no way he was hiding some container full of food in his pockets. This was bullshit. No thanks, mister. My elders say I'm allergic to garlic, so I shouldn't eat Italian food." "Okay then, let's just keep walking." His heart rate was increasing and the adrenaline was kicking in. I could smell the excitement oozing from his pores. "Here, let me hold your hand. You'll be safer that way." He didn't wait for me to respond, grabbing my hand in his clammy grip. He was a strong one, it was apparent. There was no way a regular girl of my height and frame would be able to escape this bastard. We walked on and were soon far away from any streetlight and any semblance of safety. And soon things were going to take a turn very much for the worse. He clearly sensed this too, letting go of my hand and standing in front of me to block the path. The disingenuous smile had now gone. "Okay, little lady. Fun time is over. Well, for you, anyway. My fun is just about to begin." He withdrew a set of handcuffs from his pocket and dangled them in front of my face. I seriously fucking doubt that, Johnny. And this was the part that I always loved the most. The look of utter shock on these assholes' faces when I first called them by their name. Oh, I'd seen it dozens of times before, and it never grew old. Now, for the next part. or he'll be rocked back for a few seconds before trying to reassert his authority. Wait. What? How did you know? I didn't let him finish his question. Johnny Mutton, paedophile, rapist, and child killer. We've been tracking you for a while. Damn, he looks stupid, still dangling those cuffs in front of him. Guess what? We found you. Just watching the cogs of a regular human's brain slowly turn was not my favorite part of this whole game, though. Come on, work it out already. Then you can pretend it doesn't matter that you're the boss here, and we can get down to business. Well, I don't give a fuck what you think you know. Oh, good. The bravado had returned. It was always more fun when they still thought they had the upper hand. I'm still gonna torture you, rape you, and then leave little pieces of you scattered all over this forest. Again with the dangling handcuffs. What was wrong with this shithead? Which hand should we start with? You want my left? The fucking schmuck had a look on his face like it was Christmas and his birthday all rolled into one. He advanced and roughly placed the handcuff around my left wrist. Things are gonna get real ugly now, little lady. He was smirking. He genuinely believed he was still in control. At least we can agree on something. Okay, jackass, let's get this over with. I was going to make this quick. This piece of shit wasn't even worth toying with. I grabbed the other end of the cuffs and clasped it around his wrist. There was no way he was going to escape me now. What are you doing, kid? What, you think that's... I jumped up and sank my fangs deep into his neck. Oh, I would feast on him later, but for now, ripping out half of his jugular would lead to a suitably painful death. I climbed off of him and spat out the chunk of flesh onto the ground in front of him. In his shocked state, he actually bent down and tried to pick it up, as though that would fix his lethal wound. I wasn't going to allow this sick bastard even that tiny crumb of false hope, though, and dragged him away into the middle of the clearing. Any last words, Johnny? This was a little crude of me, what with the fact that this asshole was choking to death on his own blood. I didn't have much sympathy, though. He let out a pathetic, gurgling sound, looking up at me pleadingly. Sorry, didn't catch that. He was as white as a sheet now, and not long for this world. Time to monologue. You guys just don't put in the effort anymore. I mean, for fuck's sake, I only got into town last night. I was obviously indisposed during the daylight hours, meaning I know you had zero time to prep this. Damn, I remember the old days when sick fucks like you would at least put in the effort. You know, a couple of weeks of following your victim, regular drive-bys, watching the home through binoculars, learning the names of friends. But you just spotted me and decided there and then to act on your impulses. Fucking pathetic. It didn't even occur to you how dumb it would be for a girl to be walking through the woods on her own. God, it took me less than 2 minutes to lure you in here. His breathing was extremely labored now. He had moments left. Okay, fair enough. Nobody expects one of our kind to look the way I do. And hey, like I said, you should have put in the legwork. Goodbye, Johnny. And with that, I decided to feast. It always tastes better when they're still alive, even if only just. So there you go, my dear friends. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time doing this, and as you know, it's become something of an annual tradition. I know a lot of you come to the channel just to hear me, but, well, I really enjoy hosting others here, and hope you give them a chance and go check them out, like, subscribe, and all that kind of thing, because they love doing this just as much as I do, and they deserve your support. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. See you again very soon in 2023. But until then, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye.